Chesterton begins by mocking the whole business of predicting the future. Instead of a dazzling future of machines, revolutions, or rational progress, he imagines London roughly 80 years ahead looking almost exactly like ordinary London. The joke matters because the novel's future is not a technological transformation but a spiritual stagnation. The city has not been destroyed by progress, but flattened by boredom. Humanity, Chesterton suggests, always escapes the tidy systems imagined by clever theorists, and this story will be about one such escape. In this future England, people have lost faith in revolutions, ideals, and doctrinal causes. Democracy has not been violently abolished, it has simply become irrelevant because no one cares enough to resist the governing class. The country is effectively a despotism, but a soft and bureaucratic one, with kings chosen from the official class as though public rule were merely an administrative rotation. This lifeless political arrangement creates the vacuum that the novel's absurd monarchy will accidentally fill. Oberon Quinn is introduced as a small, strange government clerk whose mind turns dull London into private myth. Walking behind his two companions, Barker and Lambert, he suddenly sees the backs of their frock coats as black dragons moving through the fog. This is comic nonsense, but it also reveals his gift: he can restore strangeness to the most overfamiliar objects. Oberon is not yet serious about anything, but he already has the imaginative power to make ordinary London uncanny. At lunch, Oberon and his friends encounter Juan del Fuego, the exiled president of Nicaragua. Del Fuego's country has been conquered, but he insists that Nicaragua still exists as an idea, preserved through its red and yellow colors. Barker responds with modern cosmopolitan reason, arguing that absorbed nations contribute to civilization, but Del Fuego exposes the arrogance hidden inside that argument. Universal civilization usually means making everyone learn the habits of the powerful. This scene plants the seed of the novel's central claim, that small, ridiculous, local loyalties may contain more life than grand rational systems. Del Fuego recognizes something dangerous in Oberon: he cares only for jokes, and anyone who cares for only one thing may become dangerous. Oberon does not yet understand this warning because his humor seems harmless to him, a private rebellion against public solemnity. Yet the phrase, "in the interests of the public," delights him precisely because it sounds so pompous, hollow, and usable as comedy. The future king is born here, not as a statesman, but as a man intoxicated by the absurdity of official language. Oberon is suddenly chosen king through England's absurd official mechanism, and he receives the news while behaving like a public fool. Rather than being sobered by power, he takes kingship as the largest stage imaginable for his humor. When officials worry about ceremony, he invents his own theory: ceremony is the reversal of the obvious, so he puts his coat on backwards as a royal ritual. His reign begins as a joke against solemn government, but because he is now king, his jokes have legal force. As king, Oberon decides that the state should become openly theatrical. Barker is horrified because he wants government to remain practical, respectable, and useful. Oberon prefers a world where public institutions admit their absurdity. He argues that everyone is solemn in public and funny in private, so he will reverse the arrangement and make public life comic. This is more than silliness. Oberon is attacking a society that has mistaken dullness for seriousness. Oberon's greatest joke is the Charter of the Cities. He invents medieval-style identities for London boroughs, requiring them to have provosts, guards, banners, colours, costumes, rituals, and civic dignities. The public enjoys the document as comedy until it becomes clear that the king intends to enforce it, forcing ordinary businessmen and householders to live inside his pageant. What began as satire now reshapes daily life, though almost everyone still treats it as an irritating royal hobby rather than a genuine civic vision. Years later, a major improvement scheme is planned through West Kensington, North Kensington, and Notting Hill. Buck, the practical North Kensington magnate, has spent years negotiating, buying, selling, bullying, and bribing to make the road possible. To him and the other provosts, the project is common sense: a city needs roads, commerce, traffic, and efficient development. The obstacle is Pump Street, an ordinary street that becomes extraordinary only because one man refuses to treat it as disposable. Adam Wayne, the young provost of Notting Hill, arrives in red robes with a sword, surrounded by disciplined red and gold halberdiers. Unlike the other provosts, who are embarrassed by Auberon's costumes. Wayne wears the invented civic identity as though it were ancient truth. He kneels before Auberon and offers his sword, declaring himself the heir of the Charter and swearing to defend the rights it gave Notting Hill. This is the novel's crucial reversal. Auberon made a joke so elaborate that it produced one man incapable of laughing at it. To Buck and Barker, Wayne's resistance is madness because he refuses profitable compensation for a small, ordinary street. But Wayne does not see Pump Street as a mere route or property parcel. He sees it as a home, a history, and a sacred local world. His language turns Notting Hill into a holy mountain, not because it is objectively grand, but because love has made it grand. The conflict now becomes philosophical. Practical men see usefulness, while Wayne sees belonging. Auberon is delighted by Wayne at first because Wayne seems like the perfect comic result of the Charter. But Wayne's sincerity unsettles him, because it exposes the gap between theatrical invention and lived belief. Buck presses the king, did he ever intend the Charter to block business, disrupt roads, and risk civil war? Auberon admits he did not imagine a man like Wayne, which means the joke has escaped its maker and entered history. The opposing provosts decide Wayne can be treated as a lunatic because any ordinary court of opinion would consider his behavior irrational. Buck's argument is brutally persuasive. A man who refuses a generous offer for a property because of the sacred dignity of Notting Hill cannot be accommodated by normal business logic. The practical men therefore plan to send workers and armed guards into Pump Street and remove the obstacle by force. This is where bureaucratic sanity becomes coercive, because it can only understand resistance as mental disorder. The novel then turns inward to explain Adam Wayne. As a boy, he rarely left Pump Street, so London became for him what mountains, seas, and forests are for other poets. He saw street lamps as stars, roofs as horizons, and urban colours as natural wonders, not because he was being clever, but because Notting Hill was the whole world available to his imagination. He failed as a conventional poet, but Auberon's Charter gives him something better than literature, a chance to live poetry as action. Wayne begins rallying the shopkeepers of Notting Hill by giving each trade symbolic dignity. The grocer, chemist, barber, toy seller, and other ordinary figures become civic officers in his imagination, guardians of a city whose rituals grow out of daily labor. Much of this is comic because Wayne speaks to mundane shopkeepers as though they were knights, priests, and guild masters. But the comedy works because Chesterton lets Wayne's exaggeration reveal a truth: ordinary work can become beautiful when it is seen as part of a shared world. Wayne's most important recruit is Mr. Turnbull, the toy shop keeper. Turnbull has spent years obsessing over the vanished wars of the world, studying old campaigns through newspapers, tin soldiers, and model battle plans. When Wayne announces that there is war in Notting Hill, Turnbull reacts not with horror but with joy, because his private hobby has suddenly become public destiny. The comic toy soldier room becomes the strategic brain of the coming resistance. Buck believes fighting is ultimately a matter of numbers. If Notting Hill has 100 men, the other boroughs can send hundreds more. If Wayne's men fight better, the Allies can simply increase the ratio until they crush him. His confidence is not cowardly, it is rational, commercial, and managerial. Yet that is exactly why he misunderstands the coming battle. He treats streets as neutral space, while Wayne and Turnbull treat them as a living fortress. The first attack on Notting Hill shocks Barker because the familiar streets become terrifyingly unfamiliar. His men move through crooked roads and corners as though trapped in a dream, and Wayne's defenders use the geography of Portobello Road to split and batter the advancing force. Barker learns that something has happened to him, not an expected transaction or social appointment, but a real event outside his control. The battle proves that Wayne's imagination has changed the city's physical meaning. Streets are no longer routes for commerce but instruments of defense. After the first defeat, Buck understands that Wayne has infected the practical men with his own atmosphere. Barker, a polished modern gentleman, has found himself fighting in a frock coat with an archaic halberd in a Notting Hill street. What seemed ridiculous 2 days earlier now feels urgent, even heroic. Buck still believes reason and arithmetic will win, but he recognizes that the old forces, fighting, honor, fear, courage, and local passion, have returned from the supposedly dead past. The struggle escalates into the great remembered battle that later gives Notting Hill its mythology. Wayne and his defenders are nearly overwhelmed, but he uses darkness, the gasworks, and the city's lamps as weapons, turning the modern infrastructure of London into a medieval miracle. The event becomes both military tactic and civic sacrament. Every year afterward, the lights are put out to commemorate the night when darkness saved Notting Hill. Chesterton's symbolism is precise here. The city becomes romantic not by escaping modernity, but by making modern lamps, streets, and gasworks part of legend. Auberon, still trying to remain detached, enters the conflict under the comic identity of a special war correspondent. He treats the war as spectacle, but the spectacle is becoming too bloody and sincere for pure comedy. The absurd costumes, banners, and invented offices now surround actual wounds, strategy, bravery, and death. Auberon's problem is that his joke has produced the one thing he cannot simply laugh away, meaning with consequences. The Allied forces appear to have Wayne trapped, and Buck raises a massive army by practical means. But Wayne has captured the waterworks tower above them and sends a message demanding their surrender. If they refuse, he will flood the valley with water. Buck, sane enough to recognize physical reality, accepts that thousands of men cannot fight a reservoir and surrenders. Notting Hill wins not because it has the larger army, but because its defenders understand the symbolic and practical landscape better than the men who thought they owned it. 20 years later, Notting Hill has transformed London. Its gates, lamps, shop rituals, civic costumes, battle monuments, and guild-like trades have turned Auberon's old joke into a whole civilization of local poetry. Auberon walks through this altered city and sees that Wayne was right in one sense: the sword has made the world romantic by charging ordinary places with memory. But Wayne's triumph has a paradox inside it. If everyone becomes Wayne-like, Wayne himself is no longer unique. The ideal of Notting Hill spreads to other boroughs, giving South Kensington, Bayswater, Hammersmith, Knightsbridge, and others their own revived identities. But Notting Hill itself begins to forget the difference between inspiring other places and ruling them. Barker and Buck, once enemies of civic romance, now defend their own local dignity against Notting Hill's interference. Wayne rebukes his people from above the street, telling them that Notting Hill's glory was not conquest but the creation of other free cities with their own symbols, monuments, and loyalties. The final battle destroys the empire of Notting Hill, but the ending refuses to treat that destruction as simple failure. In the darkness after battle, two voices argue over whether everything has been meaningless repetition or whether every local loyalty is valuable precisely because it lived once and can never be replaced. Auberon finally confesses to Wayne that the whole charter was only a joke, but Wayne answers that it was not only a joke because men loved, fought, and made meaning inside it. The novel ends by joining the satirist and the fanatic. Laughter and reverence are not enemies, and Auberon and Wayne walk away together as the two necessary halves of human truth. If you learned something today, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to see more. Happy learning. We hope to see you in the next video. Let us know in the comments which books you would like to see next.